So I was on the internet the other day, browsing the daily fails on failblog.org, when I came across this image. Yes, correct. You are seeing a picture of a sign on a toilet explicitly stating that water from the toilet should not be ingested. After considering the purpose of the sign, as IB English has taught me, I came to the conclusion that it was just there to tell people to, literally, not shove their heads into that particular toilet and drink. From my point of view, the need for the placement of this sign is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it's all common sense, right? How often have you seen people sticking their heads into a urinal just to quench their thirst? So after this, I considered how commonplace common sense actually is. Given the continued existence of this sign and its purpose, I eventually got to a point in my thoughts where I claimed that common sense is, essentially, uncommon. After hearing this, you may think immediately that this claim of mine is absolutely preposterous. After all, how can the idea of common sense not inherently be associated with commonality? Isn't it a bit like saying that hot water isn't hot? But please, do give me a chance to explain myself. To consider this counterclaim, the term common sense and its meaning must be determined. I mean, it's not like it's just some arbitrary term that I can assign any meaning to, right? So to consider my knowledge claim and the claim against it, we first have to strike upon a decent enough definition for the term common sense. To get one, the aspects that the idea of common sense are based upon must first be explored. From my own personal point of view, I believe that common sense is not inherent, and that it is a quality that is developed through a knower's experiences through life. That is to say that something may not be common sense necessarily the first time you encounter it. Take for example the following situation. Say that you go to a restaurant in, say, a rural area one day, when you're absolutely famished. This place is well reputed for some sort of edible produce known as a chili, and you decide that you want to try it out, seeing that you don't know what a chili is, and you have no idea what it tastes like. So you tell the waiter that you want a plate full of chilies. After having it served, and being the curious, hungry customer that you are, and having never ever seen or eaten a chili before, you immediately start to dig into the meal, not having any idea or what may be regarded as common sense regarding this. A few seconds later, you feel that you want to strangle the waiter for not warning you that it would taste, maybe, a bit hot. But you lack the sufficient strength to do so because you're dying from the heat of the chilies that you have just recently ingested. Considering that this has happened, you have now gained knowledge into the cuisine of chilies, and from the way of knowing known as sense perception, you now know, as a knower, that they taste hot. From here on in, your traumatizing experiences with the consumption of chilies should remind you that chilies taste hot, given the existence of common sense. This idea of learning from experiences applies to many things associated with the natural sciences area of knowledge, and exists as a source of the thing we may call common sense. Although common sense is based primarily on the experiences of a knower and the sense perceptions of things around them, the way of knowing known as reason can also be a basis upon which common sense exists. In saying this, I don't just mean that reasoning can be made without any sense perception, but that the use of reasoning by a knower can base itself upon historical information. And in saying this, what I really mean is that reason may be applied to some observation in the past to attain some degree of common sense regarding things occurring today. To illustrate this idea to you, consider this. Historically, thousands of years ago, it was observed by individuals that fire is hot and can burn human flesh. This sense perception was recorded at the time. Nowadays, how reasonable would it be to say that the idea that fire can burn human flesh still applies? By applying reason to this, in that the properties of fire have not changed over the time period, and from my perspective as a knower, I believe that, yes, fire can still burn human flesh. Personally, I have not attempted this feat, nor do I wish to, as I believe that, in this case, the use of reasoning and historical knowledge is sufficient for me to develop the level of common sense that is required to, say, not light myself on fire. So, from all this, it's now possible to get a definition of what the term common sense denotes exactly. I believe that common sense can be defined as knowledge expected of most individuals in certain social settings that is developed from experience, based from both personal sense perceptions and from the applied reasoning to historical observations. Note that I have used the words most individuals in certain social settings, and have not applied the term common sense to all individuals in all social settings. This is as, in my opinion, the term common sense should not be applied to individuals who may be psychologically impaired within the certain society mentioned. This is mainly because these people may have hindrances to their ability to comprehend common sense and as such are exempt from this definition. Furthermore, The use of the words certain social settings is necessary, as common sense should not be expected in settings that have never been experienced before. For example, say that I found myself in the middle of a crater on the moon, with some sort of suit supplying oxygen and warmth so I don't freeze or asphyxiate too soon. There is an alien vehicle nearby, which is filled with controls that are written in an alien language. Being someone who has had absolutely no experience in the use of this alien craft, or in reading whatever language they use, I would most definitely die here given that I was not rescued by the inhabitants or something of the like. As a result, the idea of common sense regarding setting-specific knowledge should not be expected the first time. It would be ridiculous for a person to be expected to have knowledge of every social setting possible. I mean, sure, I know all the rules of a badminton match, but would it be expected for you to? So, back to the actual idea of common sense being common or uncommon, and away from the pedantic nature of definitions. Well, given the definition of common sense now, the implications of the knowledge claim and the counterclaim may be explored. As I've stated before, I'm saying that common sense is uncommon, while the counter to this is that it cannot possibly be uncommon, given that the word common is part of the term and, as such, associates it intrinsically with commonality. Although this is true from an English point of view, it is important to consider the meanings of this statement. Consider the case from the United States of America, where a woman purchased a hot coffee from McDonald's, spilled it on her lap, subsequently burned herself, and successfully sued McDonald's for not explicitly stating that the coffee was, in fact, hot. This case has resulted in warning labels being included on McDonald's coffee cups now, to warn the consumer that the hot coffee that they ordered is, in fact, hot. Firstly, it should be noted that as a person who had drunk hot coffee from McDonald's before, she is within the certain society of McDonald's hot coffee drinkers. To me, the blatant lack of common sense in the fact that freshly brewed hot coffee is actually hot is absolutely ridiculous, and for it to legally force a legitimate organization to have to explicitly state this is absurd. However, it must be noted that this is all from my own opinion, as opposed to a general, objective view. As a result, this perspective is hindered by the knowledge issue known as bias, which, in this circumstance, is mainly based from the influence of my personal experiences in life. Thus, what I have observed in my time as a knower and considered to be a lack of common sense has swayed my opinion on the commonality of common sense. For example, the purpose of the caution sign on the toilet back from the start of this presentation may have been considered to be a necessary safety sign, as individuals of the area that the toilet is based in may not have been familiar with the use of a toilet. From this perspective, the necessity of the sign would actually be legitimate, and not be as a result of a lack of common sense, as common sense is not necessarily lacking in this case, as opposed to a lack of experience in the social setting. So why is it that I so staunchly believe that common sense is uncommon, when these other perspectives are possible, and when common sense should not necessarily be expected of everyone in every social setting? Simple. Consider all of the knowledge that has been accumulated over time that may be considered common sense for certain social settings. How often do people breach these expectations of themselves? How many times have you seen or heard people talk while someone else is presenting a topic in assembly? By now, we should have all developed enough common sense to see that such actions are inappropriate, and still, we continue to be ignorant of the past and the development of common sense as such. What can I say? Common sense is uncommon.